August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dordme, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight. As Emmanuel Macron attacks Sir Keir Starmer for the Channel migrant crisis, we'll be debating whether the proposed one-in, one-out migrant deal is mere smoke and mirrors. I will also be joined by the former Thatcher cabinet minister who has revealed his solution to restoring British sovereignty. Meanwhile, as the Labour Party attacks your savings, I'll be joined by one man leading the protest against the government's war on homeowners and businesses. Plus, the true cost of net zero has been exposed, buried in a watchdog report. Tonight, we reveal the amount of money you will have to pay for the green agenda. State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most erudite panel, the former Reform Press spokesman, Gawain Towler, and the political consultant, Kevin Craig. As always, let me know your views, mailmog@gbnews.com. But now, it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Katie Bowen.
Jacob, thank you and good evening. The top stories at 8:01. The small boats crisis is a, quote, shared priority that requires shared solutions. Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron agreed as they met earlier today in Downing Street. The French president said France's renewed partnership with the UK was a game changer as he met the Prime Minister in number 10 Downing Street today. Mr Macron is demanding tough action to make the UK less attractive to illegal migrant arrivals. That's as the Prime Minister hopes to strike a one-in, one-out deal to send small boat migrants back to the continent in exchange for the UK accepting asylum seekers in Europe who have a British link. Also today, Sir Keir Starmer says we are now entering a new era of world history. That's as he joined the French president at the British Museum to mark France loaning the Bayeux tapestry back to the UK. As part of the announcement, the Sutton Hoo artefacts will be loaned to France in a cultural exchange next year. President Macron is currently at the Guildhall for the City of London banquet. Elsewhere, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch pressed Sir Keir Starmer on tax rises at Prime Minister's questions today, with the Prime Minister committing not to raise income tax, VAT or national insurance on employees, as promised in Labour's manifesto. Ms Badenoch also put it to him that he's flirting with calls for wealth tax.
Mr Speaker, in their manifesto last year, Labour promised not to increase income tax, not to increase national insurance and not to increase VAT. Does the Prime Minister still stand by his promises?
Yes.
We are absolutely fixed on our fiscal rules. We remain committed to them. We remain committed to our budget, to our manifesto commitments. I realise that sticking to your fiscal rules and your manifesto commitments is a bit unfamiliar to the party opposite, but it's because of the decisions the Chancellor took, that this government has taken, that we can update the House. £120 billion of inward investment into this country since we took office.
And speaking at a press conference this evening, US President Donald Trump said that there are more tariffs to come. The president also touched on the conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine. On the economy, the president has reportedly issued tariff letters to Algeria, Brunei, Iraq, Libya, Moldova, the Philippines and Brazil. He went on to say that he was not happy with what was going on in Ukraine as Russia launched its largest drone attack on Ukraine since the war began. The president said that he will consider sending Patriot missiles to President Zelensky's country. On Gaza, President Trump said that there is a very good chance of a settlement this week. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Jacob.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. Later in the programme, we will be discussing the behind-the-scenes negotiations between Monsieur Macron and Sir Keir Starmer about the proposed one-in, one-out migrant scheme. Is it merely the latest piece of evidence that proves the government doesn't really understand the migrant crisis, thinking closing migrant hotels and moving them into social housing or granting the overwhelming majority of migrants asylum would somehow win over the public? So far, 20,000 migrants have crossed the Channel this year. The idea that it would be popular to deport all 20,000 back to France and then take back another 20,000 in exchange is for the birds. But it isn't happening anyway, as France has said it'll only take back 50 people a week. And now it appears the French president is blaming Sir Keir Starmer for the various pull factors that encourage migrants across the Channel. Seems when it comes to illegal migration, the Prime Minister is all at sea. And the answer ultimately comes down to one issue: sovereignty. While we've left the EU, our membership of the European Convention of Human Rights means that we are unable to exercise the repeated democratic mandates to secure our borders and deport those who come illegally. As my next guest has pointed out, this question of leaving the ECHR goes far beyond solving the question of illegal migration. For decades, we've been told that the Convention was the great legacy of Churchill. However, Churchill and Attlee never allowed for its jurisdiction to apply in the United Kingdom. But since the passing of the Human Rights Act in 1997 under Tony Blair, the court has had disastrous implications for self-government. The court gave and gives itself to authority to follow the bogus principle of the living instrument doctrine. This is legal jargon for inventing new rights as and when it pleases, without reference to the signatories or indeed to the voters, to the populations. Take, for example, Article 8, the right to family life. While this was originally intended to protect against the surveillance state, it has now been expanded to apply to immigration and deportation, homosexuality and same-sex unions, the policing of public demonstrations, noise abatement, and eviction for non-payment of rent. In other words, we are now tied at the hip to a court filled with politically nominated judges hell-bent on an agenda of expanding their power, which is what judges do. And this leaves us without control. For years, politicians have promised to reform the Convention from within, to derogate from it, to tinker at the edges. But we're at the point now where our ability to self-determine, to make our democracy work, is under fundamental threat, and so we have to leave. As ever, let me know your views via mailmog@gbnews.com. I'm now joined by former Cabinet Minister under both Margaret Thatcher and John Major, Peter the Lord Lilly. Peter, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
You've written a paper for the Centre for Policy Studies, first of all doing a bit of myth-busting, because we've heard for years that Churchill wanted this convention and it was a proud Conservative document written by a Conservative Lord Chancellor.
Well, a lovely story, but untrue. And it's used again and again to try and neutralise any Conservative opposition and mobilise general patriotic support. It's a British thing, incorporating British rights. It wasn't. As you said, neither Attlee nor Churchill allowed it to have any jurisdiction in the UK or any British people to take cases to the court in Strasbourg. That came in with Harold Wilson 15 years later, and then Tony Blair from the year 2000 onwards enabled our courts to do the same sort of thing as the Strasbourg court was doing. But if it had been just incorporating British rights, there wouldn't be much point to it because we had those rights already, but nor would it appear to do very much harm. You'd think it would have little impact, and that impact would be infrequent and trivial. In fact, there have been 569 cases, of which 327 before the Court of Justice in Europe have found against the British government. And they've been about serious issues, not just trivial matters.
But is there an issue with the question of an elective dictatorship in Parliament, that the House of Commons can pass any law it wants, a government with a majority can override people's rights, and there's no protection for minorities built into our system? Do they need some form of protection by some form of law, or is parliamentary sovereignty sufficient?
Well, our rights were developed over hundreds of years under parliamentary sovereignty. People hark back to Lord Quentin Hailsham's remark that we are an elected dictatorship, which had a certain plausibility back in the 50s when there were whole years when no member of parliament voted against his own party whip. But since 1970, every successive parliament has become more rebellious, in the sense more difficult for the executive to control, more people voting against the government whip. Something like 4,000 votes were cast against Mrs. Thatcher's instructions during the 12 years she was in power. Tony Blair, a few years later, 12 years in power, 6,400 votes cast against his. And we've just seen that Starmer, with a huge majority, can't even control his own opposition 1 year, his own members 1 year in. So Parliament actually is, if anything, too rebellious. It's not the plaything of the executive. The executive finds it quite difficult to get its views through, and that's, on the whole, a good thing.
And one of the issues with the convention is that it's written in fairly highfalutin terms of general principles, which judges then decide how they should be implemented, which is beginning to politicise the judiciary. And there are problems with that, aren't there? Because we see in America that judges actually vote their party ticket.
Well, that is, I think, the central problem. And it's not really the fault of the judges. If you give them fundamentally a political role, they've got to interpret a very vague thing like the right to life. What does it mean? When does it begin? The whole issue of abortion. When does it end? The issue of assisted dying. They could take decisions on that which would override Parliament. And obviously, in so doing, they are exercising political power. And when they make trade-offs between one right and another, and one obligation and another, they're taking political decisions. They can't do otherwise because that's the role they're given, as long as that convention is in force. And that politicises them. It means that people demand that these judges should be impartial. Your impartiality may be different from my impartiality. Actually, it's probably the same. But
probably the case, yes.
And that means that you've got to have political selection of judges. And you end up, as the Americans have, where Supreme Court judges are chosen politically on the grounds of their political loyalties and their life expectancy. So a president, by appointing a few judges who are going to live for a very long time, can influence law for years afterwards, regardless of what the electorate say. And that can't be a good thing. And it undermines respect for the law and respect for the judiciary.
And in these cases, it's really a decision of who decides, isn't it? Should it be a democratic mandate or should it be a judge? And in this country, we've always expected the judges simply to say what the law states, not to have an opinion on whether it's valid law or not.
Exactly. So our tradition is that Parliament decides on the law, passes statutes after often very detailed consideration, and it's the job of the courts to apply that to particular cases impartially, so they won't give you better treatment than someone else. It's the law. That's what they have to do. But they don't have to make up the law. But since the European Convention of Human Rights became part of our own law, our judges have to apply these vague things, and they have to effectively write law in whole areas of life. You mentioned the right to respect for family life. Well, what does that mean? They have to work it out. And their decisions will ultimately reflect their own prejudices.
And they have to work out whether a minister or parliament has not respected family life.
That's right.
And that's a completely arbitrary decision. There's no real fundamental basis for it. So a couple of things I wanted to ask you about on the argument against leaving. So one is that we'll be like Belarus and Russia, and that this is deeply shameful that those two countries have left when all other major countries in Europe are members, are signatories. And the other is the effect on the Good Friday Belfast Agreement and peace in Northern Ireland, which seems to require membership of the European Convention. How do you deal with those two criticisms?
Well, on the issue of will we be joining a club of Belarus and Russia, no, we'll be joining a club of New Zealand, Canada, Australia, democracies, common law countries like us, but they have no need to submit to an international court to maintain those traditional rights which they inherited from us, and they're beacons of freedom. So it's just a puerile debating point to say that we'd be like Russia and Belarus. Belarus never belonged, actually. It chose to leave because it wanted to continue doing nasty things to its citizens, and Russia was expelled for invading Ukraine, not for having very bad human rights rules. On the issue of the Good Friday Agreement, if leaving meant overthrowing or impinging or stopping the working of the Good Friday Agreement, I think an awful lot of people would not want to leave. And I certainly have second thoughts. But it doesn't, because the Good Friday Agreement says that within Northern Ireland, we should ensure that the rights enumerated in the Convention should apply to decisions of the Northern Ireland Assembly and those who work for it. It doesn't say we have to belong to the European Convention or apply those rights across the whole United Kingdom. Indeed, we signed up to the Good Friday Agreement when we'd already, the government had announced its intention of passing the UK Human Rights Act, but we hadn't done so. So as long as we, when we leave, continue with an Act of Parliament which says within Northern Ireland, these 10 or 11 rights shall apply and be interpreted by local judges as far as the application to Assembly decisions are concerned, then we would be in conformity with the Good Friday Agreement.
And one final thought, is it enough? That is to say, can we then control our borders? Can we deal with some of the political problems that voters want dealt with, but the Human Rights Courts seem to have stopped us dealing with? Hence, the small boats keep on coming.
Leaving the European Convention of Human Rights is almost certainly a necessary condition to get back control of our borders and a whole lot of other things, but it's almost certainly not a sufficient thing. It's the most important international agreement because it's the only international agreement which we've incorporated directly into UK law. But there are other international agreements like the Refugee Convention, which originally just applied to Europe, but then in the 60s was extended to the whole world. But that is an agreement that doesn't directly influence our law. It's an obligation of government to do things, but the courts can't enforce it. So clearly we need to decide whether we are going to continue to apply the terms of it. We don't have to, and we don't have to pass laws not to, but we might well want to renegotiate it. Quite a lot of other countries would like to change the terms of it anyway, although it's not as onerous as the European Convention of Human Rights.
Well, Peter, thank you very much for A, coming on, and B, correcting an awful lot of nonsense that people have been talking about this very important issue. After the break, we'll be assessing the brewing row between Monsieur Macron and Sir Keir Starmer as the French president blames the UK for the migrant crisis.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, we have found some peacocks, so we've been speaking to people today, hearing from them how much of a nuisance they say they are. It is a real mix though here. Some people saying that actually they're all right, they're part of the furniture of this village now. You can see this peacock here showing all of its feathers. I'm going to be very honest with you, we have just seen it attempt to mate the peahen that you can see behind it there. And this showing of feathers is part of the thing, what they do to try, part of the mating call here as well, to try and show all of the feathers off and everything like that. And there's a thing that they do train rattling as well. I wonder if Mr. Peacock might talk to us. Mr. Peacock, would you?
Come on, Jack. Come on, Jack. We need you to get involved.
Not sure. GBNews, Jack
This is your big David Attenborough moment, Jack.
Any questions to say to the nuisance you might be causing people? Any response?
Although this feels a little bit intimate now, there's a bit of a moment going on. It's all got a bit voyeuristic.
Very happy to talk to us so far this morning, but some residents of Tutbury here have spoken to us this morning. Take a listen to what they've told us about what they think about all these peacocks.
They've been here longer than I have, so I've lived in the house I live in at the top here 47 years. They've been there all that time, because they were from the castle to start with. The people at the castle used to have them, and they're just part of the village.
I hate them. When they do all that damage, it's heartbreaking, you know. Yeah, round them up and take them to a farm or a zoo, where they're supposed to be.
They're like the furniture. They should stay around here, you know. People just need to let them get on with what they are. They're nature's animals and they deserve to live around here, don't they?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we were talking about the ECHR, and the mail logs have come zooming in. Michael says all the politicians talk and talk. We should have left the ECHR years ago. Blair should not have signed us up to it. Well, Michael, I agree with you. Morris says MPs make the law, judges interpret the law, judges should not be able to defy the law. Parliament must be supreme, and I agree with Morris as well. And Mike says Boris Johnson had a clear majority when he was PM, and he had the opportunity to take us out of the ECHR. He did not do it, and there is no chance whatsoever of Starmer taking such action. He is a human rights lawyer first and a bad politician second. Like it or not, we are trapped with it unless reform take power with a healthy majority. Mike, I don't quite agree with you. There wasn't a majority in the Parliament when Boris was Prime Minister to leave the ECHR. There were far too many lefty Tories who wouldn't have done it in a million years. Anyway, as we discussed earlier, the French President Emmanuel Macron said this yesterday when addressing Parliament.
Hope for a better life elsewhere is legitimate, but we cannot allow our country's rules for taking in people to be flouted and criminal networks to cynically exploit the hopes of so many individuals with so little respect for human life. France and the United Kingdom have a shared responsibility to address irregular migration with humanity, solidarity and firmness. The decisions that we will take at our bilateral summit will respond to our aims for cooperation and tangible results on these major issues.
But amidst behind-the-scenes negotiations over a one-in, one-out migrant deal, it's emerged Macron has blamed Sir Keir Starmer for the crisis, urging him to mitigate the pull factors for illegal migrants. In fact, this afternoon, The Telegraph is reporting that with the one-in, one-out plan, France will only take back 50 people per week. I'm joined now by my most erudite panel, the former Reform press spokesman, Gawain Towler, and the political consultant, Kevin Craig. Kevin, say it's all your friend Starmer's fault, according to the President of France, who's another one of your fellow lefties.
Well, I think, Jacob, tomorrow's a big day because we're going to get some more details from the bilateral summit. Macron was totally within his rights to point out that the UK should mitigate any pull factors that are giving particular attraction to pull people across the Channel. I would say I'm one part of the Labour movement that thinks we should do more than we're already committed to on this issue. I mean, I'm not averse to seeing the Royal Navy involved, as you'll have heard one of our peers talk about. But I think that the government has done a lot so far, and Red Wall MPs are very clear that we have to keep to our commitments about this. And Macron's blaming it is a bit strong. He just said, you know, the UK needs to address any issues that are giving people a stronger desire to come through other European countries.
But how divided is the Labour Party? Because I heard reports of a meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party where the London, the Metropolitan MPs were really, really cross about Starmer's speech about living in a foreign land, and the Red Wall MPs who supported it were slightly overwhelmed by the Metropolitan Brigade.
Well, you make it sound like there's a battalion of London Labour MPs armed with sort of Italian bread coming and hitting their colleagues from the Red Wall on the head, but actually...
throwing spaghetti.
Yeah, and cappuccinos. But there is an understanding. I mean, I was with a number of Labour MPs today from London, and they understand that not tackling this hurts the working classes. It is a work in progress, and, you know, it's 1 year so far. The numbers of boat crossings this summer are not great. I mean, there has been a peak of that time under your government, roughly the 20,000, but a lot of people have been returned. And I think we are now working much more closely with France, which I think is a good thing. I enjoyed some of your earlier commentary about Macron. Is he, you know, does he want to be part of a European subdivision of countries? I think it's really important for us to work with France, but we've got to get it right. And I know it's not where it should be.
And do you agree with Peter Lilly that we can't actually do this until we pull out of the European Convention on Human Rights?
No, and I think that's a really good... I actually enjoyed that discussion that you had with him just now. We both did. And it was... I don't believe... what I believe is that, like, again, Red Wall Labour MPs were in the Times recently saying we are with the 9 other European states that believe we must reform the ECHR. It can't be a sacred cow, and it is leading to some things to do with criminals staying here that have to be reformed, but I don't believe in scrapping it.
But this is where Macron's right, because if we don't reform the ECHR, which Starmer definitely doesn't want to do, then people keep on coming because we never get rid of them because their children like chicken nuggets.
It's not just Starmer, of course, it's the Attorney General who's the key figure in this, I would say. I mean, Macron is, to a certain extent, right. Of course he is. If you want to stop the boats, you've got to stop the pull factors. You've got to change the way in which we handle things when people get it, because we're not stopping people before they get it. I am a little bit concerned about his idea that we must have ID cards. It's a bit strong to deal with the dodgy employment and all the rest of it. But there are so many pull factors, and he's not entirely wrong. However, we have been chucking them quite a lot of cash, and only last week we suddenly see, with the BBC cameras watching, a French policeman with a knife to dig into a dinghy. And I understand that the French police are now allowed to stretch about 200 yards or 250 yards offshore to stop these dinghies. Oh, bully for them.
They're allowed to get their feet wet.
Do you know what's really interesting? ID cards. Because I don't know if you're the same, but I think we need ID cards. I think that could help us deal with this problem. I think it's outrageous.
I think it's outrageous in order to deal with criminals and people who've arrived here illegally that I have to restrict my rights. But how dare a foreign politician tell me that I must carry an ID card? How dare they?
I'm saying this now as a fellow Brit, that ID cards could be a great thing for us in terms of clamping down on crime and really tackling these things. And us law-abiders have got nothing to worry about.
Oh, how many times we heard, you've got nothing to worry about if you abide by the law. I'm sorry, I do not trust this government, I don't trust the last government, and even if Reform win, I probably won't trust them either, in the sense that as soon as people are in power accrues, everything they get becomes more. And this is the case with the ECHR. Absolutely, it was there for very small things, and it has become everything.
I think the problem with identity cards is that the criminals don't actually obediently use them, and therefore the people like us do what we're told, and the people who are trying to solve the problem with, the black market labour force, they don't take their ID cards because their employers are meant to check their ID anyway. And you and I, if we employ somebody, we check, we keep on file a copy of their passport, we do all that stuff, but somebody running a sweatshop doesn't care.
OK. Well, I mean, I just think that we need every tool in our box to get on top of this.
But I think that we have the law. What we don't have is the will. And what we see so often is the failure of political support for the police or the border force. The border force will try and do their job, And when they try, then they're pulled back. And it's the same in so many different industries, so many different things. This is a microcosm of a far broader problem of lack of support for the actual upholding of the law. We've seen it when people try and get arrested and they get attacked. And what happens? The police are attacked rather than the people who are doing the things. And so having something like an ID card is another tool in the toolkit, agreed, but we've got plenty of tools in the toolkit already. We just have to enforce the law as it is.
But I mean, and I'm not saying that we're where we need to be, but we are returning more people. There have been thousands arrested in France as part of increased cooperation to tackle the gangs. And I don't think anybody is a grown-up would say we are where we need to be. But I think that the current government, and even Tory governments, I think, you know, are supportive of the police and our armed forces and the border force.
Well, everybody's supportive of the police.
Right. So nobody's... Well, no. I think supporting our police is a I would say a core Labour value, but I just think that we are working with France now. When Liz Truss, remember those halcyon days, right? She was asking us publicly, are France the enemy? That's how bad it was. How can you get something done if that's how you're elected to each other?
I don't think Macron likes the UK. I think Macron has been quite hostile to the UK throughout his presidency.
You see him there?
Yes, of course. He's playing for the cameras. I mean, come on.
Yeah, come on. He's schmooze in the Royal
Macron
Gallery.
is the guy that okayed the threat to cut power from the Channel Islands. Is this a friend? Seriously?
Did he do that?
Yes.
I'd take my...
During COVID. Yes, he did.
And
they do not behave like a friend. We pretend they do on big diplomatic events like today, but they are not friendly. Now, of course, we want to do trade with and we want to have the best relations we possibly can with our nearest neighbour. Of course we do. But don't fool ourselves that they are doing it for our benefit and for the goodness and fraternity.
Well,
it's not.
Mutual benefit, right? We've got so many shared interests, security, NATO, economy, billions, trading partners,
Of course,
shared history.
all of the above.
You know.
The shared history is less good.
The shared history is another programme. I think
the tapestry's coming back.
The
Yeah, and we're going to keep it
coming back. It's a buyer's market. Anyway, thank you very much, my erudite panel. In a moment, I'll be joined by one man leading the protest against the government's war on savers, homeowners and businesses amidst its ill-thought-through ISA crackdown.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, largely sunny skies across the Mediterranean. It is a little bit breezy in parts of Greece and Turkey over the next couple of days, but still lots of blue sky to be had here. Small chance of a shower in Croatia, but mostly they're staying away to the north and east. Small chance of a shower across Catalonia as well, but most of Spain dry and sunny. Bit of an onshore breeze bringing some cloud to the coasts of Portugal and fine and sunny in the Canaries. Continued risk of a shower or two in Barcelona into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A very good evening to you. Temperatures rising over the next few days. Another heat wave for a large part of the country. Strong July sunshine thanks to this strong area of high pressure. There is a weather front just draped over northern Scotland that will continue to bring some cloud and patchy rain here through the night and for tomorrow. But most places under the influence of high pressure will be dry. Light winds may turn a bit misty in a few spots, particularly around western coast, and it will be quite a warm night, especially so in the southeast and East Anglia. 16-17 to start the day on Thursday. Should be a lot of sunshine across England and Wales tomorrow, more so than today, although parts of the west will start a little drab and a little misty, probably starting fairly cloudy too for Northern Ireland. Good chunk of central, southern and eastern Scotland also having a sunny day tomorrow. But on the west coast, a grey starts. Likely to be some rain and drizzle at times here too. For Northern Ireland, maybe a bit of drizzle at times along the north coast, but generally it will be a fine day. Some sunny spells coming through in Belfast and lots of sunshine for England and Wales. These western coasts likely to start with some mist and low cloud, and that may take a while to shift because the winds are so light, but certainly many inland areas having a lot of sunshine tomorrow. and it will be hot sunshine as well. Temperatures higher than today's values, likely to get over 30 degrees somewhere across the southeast and many places into the mid-20s at least, and it's starting to turn warmer still across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Friday's a similar story. The threat of thicker cloud and drizzle at times over the northern and the western Isles, threat of some mist and low cloud around coasts, Irish Sea coast, perhaps North Sea coast too, but for most it's hot and sunny on Friday, and temperatures ticking up even further, more widely up into the high 20s, and a few more places likely to exceed 30 degrees. May well get hotter for the weekend.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back. We were talking about Macron's Starmer, and today the mail mogs really are storming in. Donald says the problem is, as with many things, with Blair's inheritance. We should bring back the role of Lord Chancellor and get rid of the Supreme Court. I entirely agree with that. Put them back in the House of Lords. Richard says, why punish British people with ID cards? How about removing those who shouldn't be here, who hate us, our culture and our way of life? Again, agree with that too. Stuart says, follow the Blair principle where ID cards are concerned. Anything Tony Blair wants, you should want the opposite. Excellent, very sound view. And another viewer says, the only way we will disincentivise mass illegal immigration is by making the penalty for it so harsh that they will not even consider it. Otherwise, there is no way to discourage it without reducing the quality of life of the British public in the process. That's very much the Lee Kuan Yew view of the world. So thank you for my anonymous viewer who is channeling his inner Lee Kuan Yew. In the latest piece of evidence that proves this government doesn't understand economics, the Chancellor is expected to reduce the £20,000 cap on tax-shielded savings in cash ISAs next week. As the Building Society Association is set to warn, this move will deter savers, disrupt house-building ambitions and prevent economic growth by triggering higher funding costs. So while under this government there's plenty of money for the union paymasters, savers, homeowners and businesses will be hit by brutal change in the regime. Well, I'm joined now by Mark Bogard, the Chief Executive of the Family Building Society. So, Mark, can you explain to me what happens when somebody puts £10 into a cash ISA? Where does that money go?
So the only reason that a building society or a bank wants to attract deposits is to be able to lend it out. And the only way that we can pay interest on that deposit is by charging a borrower who's got a mortgage, a credit card, a company that's taken a loan, interest. And then we pass almost all of that on to the depositor.
And we know from the financial crisis that when banks borrow entirely in overnight money markets, the system can become very fragile. And the best source of cash for building societies and banks is deposits that are left on the long term because they provide the stable base for providing mortgages and other loans.
So under the Building Societies Act, building societies are required to have most of their funding from the retail market, and that is stable money, which you attract and then you lend out. And as you say, that's really important to the resilience of the financial system. 40% of building society deposits are cash ISAs.
And Northern Rock got in trouble because it wasn't in that position. Most of its money was overnight money, and when people wanted it back, that was the problem.
And a lot of it was from America. So as soon as they lost confidence, they just took it away.
So actually taking the ballast of cash ISAs away risks some degree of stability. I'm not threatening a financial crisis, but takes some degree of stability out of our financial system.
So in the way a firm has to assess its liquidity, because ISA money is stickier, you have to hold less liquidity against that. The more liquidity you have to hold, the more expensive the lending has to be.
because you always have liquidity for the people who come in and say, can I have my cash back?
Yeah.
So if we take this further, what is the advantage of saying the money must go into equity ISAs rather than cash ISAs? What is the government seeking to achieve?
It's muddled thinking in two ways, and it's very interesting to me because it's Rachel Reeves picking the Nigel Lawson approach to things rather than the Gordon Brown one, because Gordon Brown introduced ISAs, individual savings accounts, in order to make what had previously only been for equities more populist and popular. And about 40% of people in the UK have got a cash ISA, only 21% have got a stocks and shares ISA. So given a choice, people choose cash. And the more cash you've got, the more you can lend out. The idea that that money is going to be invested in the great UK economy in infrastructure projects and things, it just doesn't hold true for two reasons. One, people are either comfortable with risking their capital or they're not. 90% of cash ISA buyers want the guarantee of getting their money back. So it's their hard-earned money after tax. They don't want to lose it. Mm-hmm. They understand they might make more, but they don't want the worry of losing it. And the second thing is about 89% of all equity investment from the UK in funds goes abroad. So by doing this, Rachel Reeves will be getting people to invest in Amazon or Shell.
She will achieve a reduction of the cost of capital for American businesses, marginal kind, and make almost no difference to UK businesses.
I believe so, yes.
And why do you think British investors are less willing than American investors to go into the equity market? What's the difference in the risk appetite?
I think there are two reasons to that, and it's interesting because it's something the Treasury is desperately keen to understand because they want to go back to those Tell Sid days of the privatisations. I think there are two reasons. One, the rules in the UK are incredibly complicated and keep changing. I mean, if you talk to investment advisors, they have to go and look up what you can do with your pension because it's so complicated. The second thing is that culturally and in regulatory terms and in political terms, in the UK, we've simply not built the companies that the great American public have invested in with great success. And they're called Amazon and Netflix and Tesla and Google. And if you're a New York cabbie and you bought some shares in Amazon a while ago, you've had a great result.
And this seems to me to be the fundamental thing, that governments always have clever schemes to try and persuade people to invest in this favoured thing or that favoured thing. Actually, you don't want to try and do that. You just want to create the business conditions where business can thrive, and then individuals, if they're free, will invest where they're likely to make a good return. People aren't stupid.
Exactly. If people see a great business, they're interested in it. They want to buy shares in it because they understand that that business will grow. And in the UK, we haven't seen those businesses that have created trillion-dollar companies in the States.
And that requires a stable regulatory background and a low cost of capital. To come back to our very first point, your cost of capital is lower if building societies and banks have plenty of deposits in them.
Yes, and we can lend that out, and that supports the housing market because most people need a mortgage when they buy a house. And Labour has made a central tenet of economic growth housing, and yet they want to make funding housing more expensive. It's odd.
And if you make funding housing more expensive, people have less disposable income to spend on other things, so there's less money to generate growth in the rest of the economy and to create the good companies that you would like and that people could then invest in.
100%.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you. This has been brilliantly clear, and it would be nice, wouldn't it, if the Treasury actually understood basic economics?
I better say no comment to that.
Well, we can't get everything. Anyway, in a moment, we will reveal the true cost of net zero that's been buried in a new report and debate whether it's right that you should be paying for it.
Who is he? What's he doing
They
there?
already know who you are, though.
Don't miss this special reunion. Eamon and Anne together again only on GB News Breakfast this weekend from 6 a.m.
And is that a gardening town?
No, it's a cypress town.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
The 12th, a day to celebrate history, community and family here in Northern Ireland. Join me, Arlene Foster.
And me, Dougie Beattie, as we bring you live coverage of the July 12th celebrations.
Right across the United Kingdom. It's all happening here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Abracadabra, it's time to reveal the true cost of net zero as per the Office for Budget Responsibility's new report. And the answer is £800 billion. Now, everyone knows the ABR is a bureaucratic establishment, orthodoxy upholder, so if anything, this would be a conservative estimate. But perhaps most interestingly, the largest cost of all is the loss of revenue from domestic energy production because the government's banned new oil and gas licences. In other words, we could grow our GDP by £500 billion if we adopted the Trump policy of drill, baby, drill. Well, I'm joined now by Rachel Solomon-Williams, Executive Director at the Aldersgate Group, as well as my panel, the former Reform Press spokesman Gwen Towler and the political consultant Kevin Craig. Thank you very much for coming in. This is extraordinary because the ABR is normally spouting the green orthodoxy and it's now saying there's this huge cost. That's quite a change.
I think the first thing we need to do is to unpack the number. If you have a quick look at the report, 2/3 of that number is the loss of fuel duty revenue. Yeah. So it's not the cost of meeting net zero, it's the cost of reduced tax income. It doesn't take a genius to work out that you could fix that by applying a tax somewhere else. And there are plenty of ways in the economy that many geniuses could think of to deal with that. So the actual cost is 1/3.
Sorry to interrupt so quickly, but if that tax were applied to electric cars, then the incentive to have electric cars would be significantly reduced. So you begin to change the balance of advantage between fossil fuel cars, petrol, diesel cars and electric cars.
You would do. So you'd have to think about the right way of dealing with that. There's a big conversation happening about road user charging, for example, which would be fair to all different kinds of vehicle if you just charge people for the distance they're driving.
Not to people in the countryside.
Different kinds of vehicle, I said, not different kinds of user. I'm not advocating for particular new tax models, by the way. I'm just saying that the number that's stated in the OBR report is 2/3 the fuel duty, and that's not the cost of meeting net zero. It's a completely different matter.
Absolutely, but it's money that needs to be made up, and it's the overall tax system when tax revenues are under pressure, the deficit's control, debt to GDP is nearly 100%. But there is also the issue on not making the most of our natural resources, not making the most of the fracking that we could potentially do, and continuing to drill in the North Sea.
So I think I'd agree with you about our natural resources, but I might see the sun and the wind as being more important natural resources, which are completely secure and infinite. I believe we've had this conversation before, Jacob.
Yes.
And, you know, it's being done in China. So we've also had this conversation before, but if you look at their investment in energy in 2024, 86% of their new installed capacity was renewables. They can see the writing on the wall and what's needed. We need to have that security too. And I think this is all about security. Almost the conversation about climate change and net zero is distracting from the fact that we could be energy secure and we could also protect our children from the impacts of climate change.
Well, can we? Because we're under 1% of emissions, and what we do really doesn't make any difference. And the Chinese, for all they may be adding a little bit of renewables, still are increasing their emissions every year.
Most countries that are in the Paris Agreement, which is the climate change agreement, are under 1% of total emissions, which means that we all need to work together on this. And the UK has always been a global leader on decarbonisation and clean energy and on kind of setting climate change targets. We are taking other countries with us, and that's a fantastic... and that's bringing investments to this country now.
So, Gwen, we should be really proud of this. Other countries are following the UK.
Nobody gives a hoot about Britain. The idea that we're a global leader is irrelevant. Nobody is looking at the UK and going, oh, look, what the UK are doing. We're going to do that. In fact, our major competitors think rather otherwise. We are exporting jobs because of net zero. We are losing business because of net zero to countries that don't look at Britain and say, global leadership. We don't do that. We don't have global leadership. And no amount of us cutting our own throats is going to make other countries be impressed with us. That's rubbish.
So the organisation that I run is an alliance of businesses, including financial sector businesses. And if you talk to a lot of investors at the moment, they will tell you that they look at America, and that's beginning to look a lot less attractive as an investment destination for reasons that could be discussed on another programme. Europe is a slow place to do business because of the amount of regulation that they need to work through. The UK has a kind of sweet spot at the moment in between insecurity and regulation. And actually, you know, whatever you think about Brexit, there is a bit of a dividend here where we can move quickly and we can provide that environment for investors right across different technology sectors.
There's no harm in having new technology whatsoever, innovation, all the rest, absolutely. But the UK is not a great place for solar, clearly. After Ireland, it's the second worst in the world. And whilst we go for the innovation, no problem. I don't see why we should be turning off the key to further investment in the North Sea and other things. We can do both. And for the country and our economy, maybe we should.
Kevin, you're being unduly reticent.
Well, because the quality of the debate is excellent. I do want to flag to viewers and listeners, Jacob, there's a massive section in this report today, and it's good to see the OBR treated with such respect and status on this show. It's great to have its reports being talked about in this way, but there's a big section in there about the other costs to the country if we don't actually get on top of climate change. The numbers are horrendous. So I think there are, you have to have, maybe not much of a social life, but you've got to read this report in full because the detail is, as it often was with some OBR projections, it's not as bad as the headlines are characterising this, and the cost to our country and our businesses, multi-million businesses like mine, is immense if we go down one route. So this is not as bad. And the arguments there about business, I was with business people from the States last night, okay, and they were making those arguments about people eyeing up our wind and our solar to invest in because it's the first time you hear me say something good about Brexit. We are more fleet of foot in that area.
Well, the problem is, though, that our energy costs at the moment are 4 times those of the United States, and this is denying us opportunities. So if you take data centres, they just cost much more to run in the UK, and that is a key opportunity for the future.
And any thought that we can be an AI superpower while our energy costs are so great is for the birds. It's just, we're not going to be it. Well, we wish we would. Rishi wanted it. Starmer wants it. Everybody loves the idea. We've got the innovative minds. We've got the tech. We've got the brilliance.
Well,
we don't have the capacity because our power costs too much.
I think everybody agrees with that. So anybody in the business community and at home agrees that power costs too much. Yeah. There are lots of things that can be done about that. Relying on Russian gas and petrostates isn't the most sensible way to do it.
How about our own gas?
Sorry.
No, I'm just saying it's just not secure. Our current arrangement, we cannot be reliant on, rogue states like Russia, and the net zero agenda is part of fixing that. And we're going to disagree all year long, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's disagree all the other. That's what we're here to do.
I know.
It seems to me that there is security if we use our own resources, that there is fracking, there's a lot of gas to get out, we could do it cheaply, and that all economies throughout history have depended on cheap energy to prosper. And we've reduced our emissions basically by getting rid of our heavy industry. And now we risk not being in the next stage of industry, in the information age of industry, because of high electricity costs.
And I agree about the costs, but we probably disagree on the way that you fix that. I should also just pick up on the point about the impacts, because that's absolutely crucial. So there are some other hippies who've talked about this. The Institute and Faculty of Actuaries produced a report recently in which they pointed out that...
They've never been called hippies before.
I bet they've never have. If you look at the period 2070 to 2090, there will be, if we take no action on climate change, a 50% reduction in GDP. So the impact of not tackling climate change...
This is it.
I'm sorry. Projections in 50 years hence. I'm sorry. We can't project 3 years hence. If you look at almost any projections from any internationally recognised body, including the OBR, any projection from more than a couple of years hence is complete fantasy world. And you're talking 2070.
So the good news about climate and energy projections is, generally speaking, they have changed in interesting directions. So the cost has come down. Compared with 4 years ago, the OBR has halved its estimate of what it will cost to tackle climate change in this country. What we see coming from solar and from wind and the costs of deploying those have also come down since we started projecting those. On the other hand, climate predictions are getting more terrifying, actually, than they were originally. So, yes, projections can be inaccurate, but I don't think we should write them off as being irrelevant at all.
This is probably why it was wrong for me to quote the ABR, because they cannot get the budget deficit right in 1 year. The idea they can anything right.
Too late now, James. We're discussing their reports.
They are absolutely useless. Anyway, thank you very much to Rachel and indeed to my most erudite panel. Up next is the one named Patrick Christys. Patrick, I'm waiting for your weather forecast because I'm going to be at Lord's tomorrow. So although the sun's obviously shining in Somerset, what about in St John's Wood?
Well, it's going to be so hot, I believe, that they've told people who are in the MCC that they don't have to wear their jackets, which is against protocol. So there we go.
That's outrageous.
I know, but that presumably includes you. So there you go, good stuff. Anyway, right. Okay, we're moving on. Right, so in light of Keir Starmer's really awful deal with Emmanuel Macron about the migrants, I've decided to list every single thing an illegal migrant gets for free in Britain. I've also got some really concerning news for you. I'll reveal exactly how much legal aid the Southport killer Axel Rudy Cabana has claimed off the taxpayer. And Robert Jemrick joins me at 10 p.m. Is he really to the right of Nigel Farage? Stay tuned.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A very good evening to you. Temperatures rising over the next few days. Another heat wave for a large part of the country. Strong July sunshine thanks to this strong area of high pressure. There is a weather front just draped over northern Scotland that will continue to bring some cloud and patchy rain here through the night and for tomorrow. But most places under the influence of high pressure will be dry. Light winds may turn a bit misty in a few spots, particularly around western coast, and it will be quite a warm night, especially so in the southeast and East Anglia, 16-17 to start the day on Thursday. Should be a lot of sunshine across England and Wales tomorrow, more so than today, although parts of the west will start a little drab and a little misty, probably starting fairly cloudy too for Northern Ireland. Good chunk of central, southern and eastern Scotland also having a sunny day tomorrow. But on the west coast, a grey starts. Likely to be some rain and drizzle at times here too. For Northern Ireland, maybe a bit of drizzle at times along the north coast, but generally it will be a fine day. Some sunny spells coming through in Belfast and lots of sunshine for England and Wales. These western coasts likely to start with some mist and low cloud, and that may take a while to shift because the winds are so light, but certainly many inland areas having a lot of sunshine tomorrow. and it will be hot sunshine as well. Temperatures higher than today's values, likely to get over 30 degrees somewhere across the southeast and many places into the mid-20s at least, and it's starting to turn warmer still across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Friday's a similar story. The threat of thicker cloud and drizzle at times over the northern and the western Isles, threat of some mist and low cloud around coasts, Irish Sea coast, perhaps North Sea coast too, but for most it's hot and sunny on Friday, and temperatures ticking up even further, more widely up into the high 20s, and a few more places likely to exceed 30 degrees. May well get hotter for the weekend.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some